Considering that video games can be full of so many contrasting and brilliant gaming experiences, we should always try to be open-minded to new games that are coming out. But I appreciate that that is going to be difficult for a lot of people when coming to consider the existence of Metal Gear Survive. I get it. I mean, Konami did wrong by the darling of the video games industry, or so the rumours say of Hideo Kojima's departure from the company, and that is an unspeakable crime for one of the preeminent auteurs of video gaming to be treated in such a way. And now Konami have gone back to the franchise without him, taking Metal Gear Solid 5 and twisting it into a zombie survival game. It's easy to assume that it's going to be terrible, that it offers nothing new, and worse, that it goes against the spirit of Metal Gear Solid. I mean, Kojima himself said that the Metal Gear games are all about political fiction and espionage, and definitely not zombies. No, not zombies and wormholes, but nanobots, psychic abilities, telekinesis, cloning, and freewheeling mercenary states. I mean, zombies would just be a bit ridiculous now, wouldn't they? The thing is that stepping away from this being Konami and based off the prior work of Metal Gear Solid 5, Survive is actually pretty good. There's a real struggle to stay alive in the single player, keep your food supply stocked, gradually build up your base, venture into the poisonous dust storm and deal with humans that have got crystals instead of heads. The simple conceit is that during the climactic event of Ground Zeroes, a whole bunch of Mother Base was sucked up into a wormhole and transported to an alternate dimension. While your character was not the only one to be caught up in all of this, you are one of just a handful of survivors from both sides of this fight, and the only able-bodied soldier who can actually venture forth to find resources. You start off with practically nothing, crafting a basic spear of sorts and going to hunt sheep and to gather water for simple food resources nearby. There's an interesting stealth and stamina system at play, with your hunger and thirst levels determining how far your health and stamina will be able to recharge over time. Keeping yourself well sustained means that you can head out much more easily because you can sprint for longer, you don't have to worry too much about taking hits from zombies, and so on. The overarching aim is to gather enough Cuban crystals to power a means of opening a fresh wormhole and heading home. It's these crystals that sprout from the necks of the corrupted humans and act as currency for upgrades, though harvesting from their bodies won't actually get you very far in that regard. Going toe-to-toe with them isn't terribly tricky most of the time, because they're incredibly dumb. You can simply erect a fence through your iDroid's fancy fabricator thingy, and this is enough to block their path, even if, theoretically, they would just be able to walk around them. You've got plenty of time to stab through the chain link fence with your spear. However, even though they're stupid, if they've got enough numbers, they will bash a fence down and climb over it, causing it to collapse in the process. As always with zombies, they are more dangerous in large numbers. That's sure to happen when trying to broaden your reach into the rest of the open world by restoring power to teleporters dotted around this place. The noise of starting up these teleporters again will draw hordes of zombies towards it while you have to try and defend the station with barricades and whatever weapons you have. It doesn't help that these are situated in the cloud of poisonous smoke that drags in your field of view, deprives you of your minimap for orientating yourself, and it forces you to use an oxygen tank, meaning that you can only spend so much time here. While your base starts off looking like an oil rig that's been dropped from a great height, because that's quite literally what it is, it has a few handy crafting stations dotted around amidst the wreckage, and you'll have to build it up into something that is defensible. The threat is non-existent to start with, but chain link fences, sandbag barriers, and more will eventually become vital to making sure that it can be protected from the zombies that come at you. There are certain tensions within the survival elements of this game that do aggravate to start with, but that I can also see disappearing after a few hours of play. You'll so often pick up empty bottles and then be able to fill them with dirty water from pools and streams, but you can't purify it until you've upgraded your cooking fire, and so you might have to gulp down potentially poisonous water. Similarly, several of us were playing and we were all stumped trying to figure out why I couldn't just combine 5 dirty bottles of water into one canteen, despite the canteen being able to take 5 units of dirty water. It just doesn't make sense, but we did eventually discover an obscure system for being able to do this at one of the crafting stations. You'll have to try and explore the world to try and find blueprints for better weapons, such as the bow and arrow or actual guns, though you need to scavenge resources in order to build them, and potentially upgrade your crafting stations as well. There's also an uneasy balance between the single player and the multiplayer, though this aspect is still being balanced for launch, and it was likely skewed for this preview build. You take your existing characters through to the 4-player co-op mode, but this potentially means that you're taking a character which has got low health, poor equipment, and in turn that makes you more of a liability than a help. So you need to be prepared before you decide to go and take part, which I felt was difficult after a few hours of play, and it prevents it from being a simple drop-in, drop-out experience until you've found your way in the single-player game. There's no food in sight when you're playing co-op, so if you're running low on stamina or health, you will need to head back to the single-player and do a bit of hunting or find resources. However, the co-op offers something different to the single player. It's a much more purist defense game as you try to stop 3 waves of enemies from reaching and destroying a wormhole generator, which is drawing in supplies for you. We soon discovered that the enemies are tied to a level system, so we were utterly hopeless as level 4 characters going up against level 10 enemies, especially because there were 1 or 2 that we had never seen before. That said, the rewards for even surviving a single wave were incredibly generous in both giving experience and resources, quickly helping us to advance and be able to challenge for more difficult missions. With each wave being on a timer before it wipes out the remaining zombies with a pulse of energy, this is a simple case of trying to stall the incoming zombies as much as you possibly can and prevent them from destroying the generator. However, mixing things up, there are also optional objectives and things to find, boosting your mission rank if you can get them and resulting in an even bigger payout. Going into Metal Gear Survive, I really wasn't sure what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised to discover a game that actually manages to add something meaningful on top of Metal Gear Solid 5. There's this feeling of being resource starved and actually having to struggle to survive in this hostile environment. Sadly, I'm sure that this game will remain all too easily dismissed, its publisher rightly or wrongly maligned, but believe it or not, there's something here that could actually be pretty damn good in its own right. There is a beta test running from the 18th of January until the 21st on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and I would definitely recommend that if you are open to the possibility that this is a good game, you give it a try and see what it's actually all about. Thanks as ever for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed our video. You can catch our impressions on Metal Gear Survive and plenty of other games here and over on the6thAxis.com. Before you go, I have to ask you to like and subscribe, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!